My mother, driven by jealousy, stole my rings during my wedding, but when she tried to take them to a jewelry store to get money, we filed a formal report for aggravated theft. I got married in September and everything was supposed to be perfect. Outdoor ceremony, beautiful weather, incredible food, open bar. My husband and I had been planning this for over a year, and everything came together beautifully. The reception was at this venue with indoor and outdoor space, and by nighttime everyone was having the time of their lives. Around 9 p.m. I went to the bathroom to wash my hands and touch up my makeup. The dancing had already started and I had been greeting people for an hour, so I wanted to freshen up before more photos. I took off my engagement ring and wedding band and left them on the counter next to the sink. Both rings together were worth approximately $12,000. My husband designed them specifically for me, and we had saved for months to get exactly what we wanted. The engagement ring has a round diamond with smaller stones on the band, and the wedding band fits perfectly against it. My mother walked in while I was touching up my lipstick. She immediately noticed the rings on the counter and picked them up to look at them under the light. She made comments about the clarity of the diamond and how well made they were, turning them in her hands. We chatted for maybe 2 minutes before my maid of honor came bursting in saying they needed me outside for more photos with the bridal party. I left with her and completely forgot about the rings on the counter. The photographer had us doing shots around the gardens, and it took maybe 20 minutes. When we came back inside, the reception was in full swing and I got pulled into dancing and talking with guests. It wasn't until things started to calm down around midnight that I suddenly remembered. I ran back to the bathroom and they were gone. I checked every surface. I looked in the trash, under the sinks, everywhere. Nothing. I found my husband and told him what happened. We searched that bathroom 3 more times. I checked the other bathrooms. I asked the venue staff if anyone had turned in jewelry. No one had seen anything. The venue manager helped us search and suggested checking their lost and found box. We did, but nothing was there either. The first thing I did was ask my mother. She had been in there and had been holding them, but she said she left right after us and I remember seeing her later dancing. The last thing I would suspect was that she was the culprit. By this point I was panicking but trying to hold it together because it was still our wedding night and there were still guests there. We asked people if they had seen the rings or if anyone had picked them up by accident. My mother was actually one of the people helping us search. She looked concerned and kept saying how terrible this was, suggesting maybe I had left them at the hotel or maybe they had gone down the drain somehow. I knew for certain I had left them on that counter. I was absolutely sure. The reception ended and we went back to our hotel. I barely slept. The next morning I filed a police report. The officer who took it looked pretty skeptical that anything would come of it. He said jewelry usually isn't easy to recover. It's almost impossible to trace unless you have no idea what you're doing. I gave him photos of the rings, the receipts, our insurance information, everything I had. I posted in the family group chat asking if anyone had seen the rings, thinking maybe someone might have spotted them. Most people didn't respond. My mother did, saying she hoped they would turn up and how horrible it was that this had happened on such a special day. The next day I called the venue again and asked if I could review their security footage from the bathroom area. The manager couldn't show me the footage directly due to privacy concerns, but he assured me he would look at it and let me know if anything came up. He called me 3 hours later and said the cameras in that section hadn't been recording due to a technical issue. Of course they weren't. I was starting to accept that the rings were just gone. About a week after the wedding, I got a call from a pawn shop about 30 miles away. The guy on the phone said he was calling because my insurance company had flagged the rings in some database that pawn shops check for stolen items. Someone had come in that morning trying to pawn both rings. He said the person seemed nervous and the rings were clearly a matching set, which struck him as suspicious. When he entered them into the system, it flagged that they had been recently reported stolen. The person left quickly when he said he needed to verify some information. He had security footage and asked if I wanted to come see it or if I wanted him to send it to the police. I immediately called the detective who had been assigned to my case. He went to the pawn shop that afternoon and reviewed the footage. He called me later and asked if I could come to the station to identify someone in the video. I went the next day with my husband. The detective pulled up the footage on his computer, and it was clear who the culprit was. It was my mother. Crystal clear video of her walking into the pawn shop, pulling out my rings, and trying to sell them. She was wearing the same jacket I had seen her in many times. The timestamp showed she had been there at 10:47 a.m. You could see the shop owner asking her questions and her kept glancing toward the door. When he stepped away to check something on his computer, she grabbed the rings and left. The detective asked me to confirm it was her, and I did. He explained that because the rings were worth more than $5,000, this was a felony theft charge. He said they would get a warrant for her arrest and would search her apartment to see if she still had the rings. They arrested her 2 days later. During the search of her apartment, they found both rings in a shoebox in her closet wrapped in tissue paper. Apparently, she had panicked after the pawn shop incident and brought them home. The detective called to let me know they had recovered the rings and that I could pick them up once they were processed as evidence. Her preliminary hearing was scheduled for early October. I received notification that I would need to testify. My husband took time off work to come with me. The evidence was so overwhelming that I didn't really even need to testify, but if we wanted justice, it was better to cover all our bases. We had the police report from after the wedding, the pawn shop video, the rings found in her apartment, the testimony of the shop owner who could identify her. Her lawyer tried to argue that I had given her permission to pawn them because I had heard she was having financial trouble and she could use that money to get out of the situation. It was the stupidest thing I had ever heard. First, she never mentioned money problems to me. I don't know if they're even real. Second, why would I give my wedding rings to my own mother hours after getting married so she could pawn them? I think it would be more logical to just give her cash. The case proceeded to trial. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of felony theft to get a better sentence since it was her first offense. When I finally realized this was coming to an end, I felt better because you never expect your own family member to steal from you. However, the family drama didn't stop there. Her side of the family basically cut all contact with me and my father. I was fine with that, because if the mother is a thief and the rest of them think that's okay, I guess it's better to have them at a distance. In the weeks leading up to the sentencing, I kept receiving messages from various relatives asking if I was sure I wanted to go through with this. Yes, I was more than sure. I don't understand why I shouldn't be just because she's my mother. It was theft. She lied to my face while I was searching for them. She even acted concerned about what was happening when she was the guilty one. I don't understand how I could feel bad for her or have doubts about pressing charges. The only time she showed remorse was when she got caught. That's how all criminals work. The sentencing was last week, and I have never felt more relieved about anything in my life. We arrived early at the courthouse. My husband, my father, and me. My mother's side of the family was already there, sitting on the opposite side of the courtroom like it was a wedding with divided seating. The prosecution recommended 24 months in county jail, 3 years of probation, restitution, and community service. They emphasized that these were expensive items and the fact that she deceived me by helping me search when she had them all along. The sentence ended up being 18 months in county jail with possibility of early release after 12 months for good behavior. 2 years of probation after release, $6,500 in restitution for the stress caused, plus $1,200 in fines to the state for all the resources used in the investigation. That plus 200 hours of community service and a no-contact order with me and my immediate family. Since the room was divided, my side of the family was okay, though we weren't celebrating and jumping around either. We were just happy that some justice had been served, while on my mother's side there were long faces and glares toward us. My mother's brother, my uncle, started yelling at me, my husband, and my father. He called me a money-grubbing bitch, told my husband to be careful who he married unless he was just as slimy as me. And he called my father an idiot for raising me this way. Since the judge hadn't left the courtroom yet, he ordered the officers to hold my uncle for about 6 hours for contempt in his court. The rest of her side of the family wasn't happy about it either, but they didn't say anything so they wouldn't end up like my uncle. My mother was escorted out to begin serving her sentence, and we expect some of her assets to be garnished for the restitution and fine. It's bad that we're now at odds with people who attended my wedding, but it's also bad that my own mother did what she did. They say the worst betrayals come from the people you trust most, so this is a good example of that. I didn't mean to sound presumptuous. I just wanted to explain what the rings were like so you'd understand their monetary value. If they had been simpler rings, my mother probably wouldn't have received such an extensive sentence. In fact, the value of the rings isn't what's important, but the whole event. Stealing my rings at my wedding, trying to pawn them, and being my mother, someone close to my life, is what hurt me most about what happened, especially after finding out the reasons that led her to do it. Someone told me that she confessed to her close family that she did it because she was jealous of my wedding. She wanted to tarnish it somehow so it wouldn't be so beautiful. She said what she really needed was help, that she knows what she did was wrong. That's why she hates me now, because I don't understand that she has a problem and that she's not just a common thief. Maybe I would have understood if she had returned the rings. But she tried to pawn them, and that doesn't speak of a remorseful person. It speaks of a dirty criminal who wants to keep the money for her own benefit. If she had returned them, promised to get help, and apologized, maybe none of this would have happened. Words are carried away by the wind. Only actions and facts matter. It's been over 2 years since the wedding, and I have people asking for updates from that time. Sorry for not responding before, but if you see my profile, it's an account created just for this, and it's not like I use it every day. I only came back to the account because my husband mentioned it the other day, and today I finally made the decision to return. She got out of jail over a year ago for good behavior. She's not an experienced criminal who commits more crimes while in jail. At least she's been motivated to behave like a model citizen to get out as soon as possible. She'll still be on probation for a while. The no-contact order is still in effect and will be until her probation ends. I can't extend it. It's not renewable unless there's some reason to do so. I know all this only because Victim Services sends me automatic notifications. I haven't heard anything from her directly, and I have no desire to. I've received my restitution for the theft, and I understand she also paid the fine with the accounts in her name that were garnished. She has also completed her community service hours. If she keeps this up, she'll be completely free when her probation ends. For now, she has to keep reporting once a month to her probation officer along with keeping a job and not violating any part of the agreement. I appreciate that my father never wavered on this. Never. Not once did he suggest I should forgive her or move on and let it go. It would be normal to do so since she's also lost her brother during this time. I asked him once and he told me it was the right thing to do and that he likes being on the opposite side from his sister if she defends these things. I don't even understand the anger from my uncle and aunt. I wasn't the one who gave her that sentence. I just filed a report, even before knowing it was my mother, and that was my contribution. If I had wanted to drop the charges, I couldn't have, because they were considered felonies and that can only be dropped by the prosecution. We know that having a low-paying job, which is all you can get with a criminal record, living in her parents' house at 45 isn't exactly nice. She chose to commit theft against her own daughter, not me. I'm also not surprised that people here ask me if I don't feel guilty for doing this to my mother. I've seen it in my own real life too. Someone compares my life to my mother's, which turned out very different, and asks me if I think about that or if it gives me any kind of remorse. The answer is no. Not one bit. She didn't have to steal my rings. She could have been happy for me. She could have handled whatever jealous resentment she felt in literally any other way. She could have gone to therapy, talked to someone, worked on herself. The no-contact order has been respected so far. She hasn't tried to contact me directly. I'm sure her probation officer made it very clear what would happen if she did, going back to county jail or somewhere much worse. She has almost 2 years of probation left, which means 2 more years of staying away from me and my family. Her siblings not so much, but they don't have a restraining order either. So they've been talking badly about my father from time to time. They avoid me like the plague. I think they believe that doing so would put their sister at risk. Nothing should happen unless it's an indirect message from her. I'm not complaining for whatever reasons. My father can handle his sister well, and has done so whenever he's had the chance. For example, one day they ran into each other. My father was walking with my stepmother doing some shopping, and I guess my aunt and uncle were doing the same. At first they avoided each other. It was the simplest thing. But my uncle had to make a comment about me, something about how nice it must be that I can walk free despite the kind of person I am. He said it when they had passed each other when both had their backs turned, saying it loud enough for my father to hear. So my father turned around and asked him to repeat what he said to his face. My uncle didn't even turn around, so my father decided to tell him that wouldn't be his sister's situation if she wasn't a thief. Which he said while looking at him. though his brother-in-law kept walking without turning. My uncle couldn't have the courage to repeat what he said, much less defend himself. They've had other encounters after that, although that was the most important one where something worth mentioning happened. I'm sorry there isn't more to tell, but thanks to that I have a much more peaceful life. If I could tell you more, it would be because I would be suffering from my mother or my aunt and uncle, but that's not the case. This isn't going to be an update about things that happened recently, but I want to do it anyway now that I'm calmer. Not much, but more than I was a few months ago. Before I start and tell many things that have happened with my mother's side of the family, first I'll say some things I never knew and found out as a result of some problems with my father. My father and my aunt have had a strained relationship since they were children. I wouldn't say it was bad. My dad calls it distant. They didn't get along too well and only started tolerating each other as adults by being civil and mature. I didn't suspect this because until my mother stole from me at my wedding, my relationship with all of them was normal. So was my father's with my aunt. They didn't see each other or have beers together, but there was nothing that would make you suspect they didn't love each other much. My mother's legal problems and these past years basically brought back those differences between siblings that had been buried since they were teenagers. My mother finished her probation and therefore also her restraining order. They notified me because it was information I needed to know and part of the process. As I said before, there was no option to renew it because it was an order not granted for direct violence against me. I know those orders can be renewed or extended indefinitely. I didn't know what to expect, but nothing happened for a couple of months until we were attacked by my mother's family. First my father by my aunt, but then my mother at me. Not physically, but with the intention of hurting us and harming us in some way. I'll start with my dad because it was first. What happened with my mother occurred later due to a situation with me that triggered what she did. My dad has a food truck, one that's famous in the city, or at least has several followers on his Instagram account after I practically forced him to open one. Before that, he was still famous. People knew the days and places where he would be, so they could try his food. I don't want to risk people from my city knowing what I'm talking about. I won't say what type of food he serves. Because if you live here, I don't think it would take you long to figure it out. The summary is that my aunt got a friend of hers to sue my father for food poisoning. My father has everything in order and is very careful with food, so it was almost impossible for that to be the case. We were sure. This is what happened. Her friend came to eat one day and you can see from the nearby cameras that he did. My father didn't know him. Then he showed up at a hospital with severe stomach pains and vomiting to end up filing the lawsuit. My father had a terrible time for several months, but I don't want to talk about that because it would be too long. What finally happened is that we discovered he was my aunt's friend, that they had been planning to ruin my father, and that they were caught. The timeline, in broad strokes, was as follows. After confirming that he had eaten at my dad's truck, thanks to the cameras they themselves provided to show he had eaten there, my father's lawyer demanded the medical evaluation, which didn't indicate food poisoning because he should have had other symptoms that weren't present in him. When they started talking about charges for false reporting and a countersuit, including one for damages against the popularity of my dad's business, he started talking. He had taken medicine to induce vomiting. I won't say the exact name because it's dangerous, and I've been reading that some students use it to have an excuse not to attend an exam, also for control of what they eat. I don't know who reads this, so it's better not to help harm yourself. My aunt was behind it, and all the lawsuits and charges were directed against her. The friend reached a much smaller financial settlement, just for having provided evidence against his friend. I don't want to extend this too much, but my aunt received a year of probation for her scheme. It doesn't seem too fair for what she did, but the almost $450,000 in damages made up for it. My father cried with joy when he got that amount, although it took months before seeing that money, when my aunt sold her house and took all the money from her retirement fund to be able to pay him. I'm telling it in a few paragraphs, but this lasted several months and my dad's business suffered quite a bit. At least now things seem to be normalizing and the economic impact is less. In fact, my father is thinking of selling it when it recovers and using that money and the compensation to retire. It's a great plan. He's not getting any younger, and spending long hours standing serving customers can affect his health in a few years if it hasn't already. He also obtained a restraining order against his sister as part of the lawsuit settlement. They moved out of the city just so they wouldn't have to worry about being near my dad, but I think it's out of shame that he'll be arrested. My aunt always had something against the police, and my father is sure it would be her worst humiliation. She wasn't arrested in the past, but she hates them. Now let's get to what happened with my mother. My husband and I moved to a new house 18 months ago. Everything that happened next was more or less, so you can get an idea, in the middle of the lawsuit against my aunt, when we already knew she was behind it. We moved to this place, and it wasn't a secret where we lived. Nothing had happened after my mother finished her probation, nor did we want to live in fear of being careful about telling people where we lived. I hate that victims have to live terrified of everything, so the perpetrator won't find them. Friends and family, not from my mother's side, knew about it. I don't know who said it or if she simply got the information from public records, but we started receiving letters with cutout letters, like the ones in movies demanding ransom. I wonder if in real life, in kidnappings, the same thing happens. I had also just found out I was going to be a mother, which was the trigger. The letters had threats towards me and about what could happen to my baby. We filed a report at the first letter, but the police couldn't link it to my mother, who was already on the list of suspects from the first moment. The police asked for recordings from the neighbors, but our house is the first on the street. None of them showed anything clear enough. If the house had been further down, my mother would have had to pass by the cameras and the recording would have been better. The letters didn't stop and the police rejected our idea of leaving an officer to catch her. In the end, my husband installed hidden cameras pointing at our mailbox. In just 1 week we had done the police's job because you could see very clearly that it was her leaving a letter, the same one that had more threats. During all that time we took some measures, like me staying at a friend's house in case my mother decided to follow through on the threats and wasn't just trying to scare me. She was arrested that same day at her job. She's serving a 3-year sentence with no possibility of early release for good behavior. They've also given us a restraining order that we can renew, and we plan to do so. As I mentioned, all of this happened over a much longer period of time, but I'm keeping to summaries for now. Even with summaries, this is getting very long. As you can see, I've been busy so much so that I didn't even think about updating here. In fact, I was paranoid that she might read these things and know we had hidden cameras. Now, without my aunt in this city and my mother in prison, who won't be out until early 2028, I feel pretty safe writing this. I have some anxiety about what will happen in 2028. The police say that if she commits her third offense, she'll be sent away for many years. Many. Although it doesn't leave me calm because she has less to lose. I hope I don't have to come back in 2028 to write something else about my mother. My father has been my rock through all of this. When I told him what I found on the security footage from the pawn shop, he didn't hesitate. He said we needed to press charges no matter who it was. He said family doesn't steal from family, and anyone who does isn't family anymore. My stepmother agreed completely. She said she had always felt something was off about my mother but never wanted to say anything because she didn't want to cause problems. Now she wishes she had spoken up sooner. The trial was harder than I expected. Sitting in that courtroom watching my own mother being led and wearing an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of her. She looked older than I remembered. Thinner. Her hair wasn't done the way she usually kept it. When she saw me in the audience, she started crying. For a second I almost felt bad. Then I remembered how she had helped me search for those rings. How she had hugged me and told me how sorry she was that this happened on my special day. How she had suggested maybe I had left them somewhere else or maybe they went down the drain. She had looked me in the eyes and lied. Over and over again. The sympathy disappeared. Her lawyer tried everything. Said she was going through financial difficulties. Said she had a gambling problem and needed help, not punishment. Said she had never been in trouble before and deserved leniency. The prosecutor wasn't having it. She showed the jury the pawn shop footage again. Frame by frame of my mother walking in with my rings. Trying to sell them. Looking over her shoulder like she knew she was doing something wrong. Then grabbing them and running when she realized they were flagged as stolen. The prosecutor also called me as a witness. I had to describe finding the rings missing. The panic I felt. Asking my mother for help searching. Watching her pretend to be concerned while she had them in her pocket the whole time. I had to explain what those rings meant to me. How my husband had designed them specially. How we had saved for months. How they were supposed to represent our love and commitment, and she had tried to sell them for cash. My mother's lawyer asked me if I had ever loaned her money before. I said yes a few times over the years. She asked if my mother had ever paid me back. I said sometimes she did and sometimes she didn't. The lawyer tried to spin this into some kind of pattern where I regularly gave my mother money, and maybe I had told her she could have the rings. I shut that down immediately. I said there is a massive difference between lending someone grocery money and giving them your wedding rings to pawn on your wedding day. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all charges. Felony theft. The judge scheduled sentencing for the following month. When we came back for sentencing, that's when everything exploded. My uncle showed up. My aunt showed up. Cousins I hadn't seen in years showed up. All of them on my mother's side. All of them glaring at me like I was the criminal. The judge asked if anyone wanted to speak on my mother's behalf. My uncle stood up. He gave this whole speech about how my mother was a good person who made one mistake. How I was vindictive and cruel for pressing charges against my own mother. How the real crime was me destroying our family over a pair of rings. The judge listened without expression. Then he asked if anyone wanted to speak on behalf of the victim. Meaning me. My father stood up. I had never heard him speak so clearly or so firmly. He said his daughter had been betrayed by someone who was supposed to love her unconditionally. He said my mother didn't just steal rings, she stole trust. She stole the memory of what should have been the happiest day of my life. He said any mother who would do that to her child on her wedding day deserved whatever punishment the law allowed. My mother was crying through all of this. Her lawyer kept handing her tissues. When my father finished, the judge nodded slowly. He said he had considered all the factors. The value of the stolen items. The relationship between the perpetrator and victim. The deception involved. The lack of remorse shown until caught. He said theft within families is particularly egregious because it destroys the bonds of trust that hold communities together. Then he handed down the sentence. 18 months in county jail. 2 years probation. Full restitution. Community service. No contact order. My mother collapsed when she heard it. She had to be helped to her feet by the bailiffs. As they led her out, she turned and looked at me. I expected hate. I expected anger. Instead, I saw something worse. Emptiness. Like she had already accepted that our relationship was over, and there was nothing left to feel. My uncle started yelling at that point. Calling me names. Calling my father names. Calling my husband names. The judge was not pleased. He ordered my uncle held for contempt. 6 hours in a holding cell. The rest of my mother's family left quickly after that. They didn't want to risk joining him. We didn't celebrate after. We just went home. My husband held me while I cried. Not because I was sad for my mother. Because I was sad that this was what my family had become. People keep asking me if I regret pressing charges. The answer is always no. My mother made her choice when she took those rings. She made another choice when she tried to sell them. She made another choice every single time she looked me in the eye and pretended to help me search while knowing exactly where they were. She had so many opportunities to give them back. So many chances to confess. She never took any of them. The only reason she ever showed remorse was because she got caught. That's not real remorse. That's just regret about consequences. My father told me something after the trial that stuck with me. He said some people will always blame the victim for not protecting their abuser. He said those people are telling you exactly who they are. Believe them and keep your distance. I've taken that advice. My mother's side of the family is no longer part of my life. My aunt and uncle moved away. My cousins don't speak to me. Old family friends who sided with my mother have been cut off. My world is smaller now, but it's safer. My husband and I renewed our vows last year. We had a small ceremony, just us, my father, my stepmother, and a few close friends. I wore my rings. The same ones my mother tried to steal. They mean even more to me now. Not just as symbols of my marriage, but as proof that I stood up for myself. That I didn't let family guilt force me into accepting being victimized. My mother gets out this year. Her probation will last another 2 years after that. The no-contact order stays in effect the whole time. I don't know what will happen when it expires. I don't know if she'll try to reach out. I don't know if I would want her to. Right now I'm focused on my life. My husband and I bought a house last year. We're expecting our first child in 4 months. A little girl. My father cried when we told him he was going to be a grandfather. He's already bought approximately 1 million stuffed animals for her room. Life is good. Better than it was. The trial and everything that came after was the hardest thing I've ever been through. But I came out the other side stronger. I know now that I can survive betrayal. I know that I don't have to accept being treated badly just because the person doing it shares my DNA. I know that choosing myself isn't selfish, it's necessary. My mother stole more than rings from me. She stole my ability to trust family automatically. She stole the idealized image I had of her. She stole my peace on what should have been the happiest day of my life. But she didn't steal my future. She didn't steal my marriage. She didn't steal my relationship with my father or the family I'm building with my husband. I still have the rings. I wear them every day. They remind me of what I've been through and what I've overcome. They remind me that my husband chose me and I chose him, and nothing, not even my own mother, could destroy that. Sometimes I wonder if things could have been different. If my mother had just asked me for money, would I have given it to her? Probably. If she had told me she was struggling, would I have helped? Definitely. But she didn't ask. She took. And then she lied about it. That's the part that still hurts the most. Not the theft, but the deception. Looking me in the eyes and lying while pretending to help. That's what I can never forgive. My therapist says I'm making good progress. She says it's normal to have complicated feelings about family members who hurt us. She says healing isn't linear and some days will be harder than others. She's right. Most days I don't think about my mother at all. But some days, especially around my wedding anniversary, the memories come back. The panic of realizing my rings were missing. The desperation while searching. The moment of seeing my mother on that security footage. The sick feeling in my stomach when I realized the truth. Those memories fade a little more each year. They don't control me anymore. I've built a life that has nothing to do with my mother or her choices. I refuse to let her theft define me. I'm not the woman whose mother stole her wedding rings. I'm a wife. I'm about to be a mother. I'm a daughter to a father who has never let me down. I'm exactly who I want to be. And my mother? She's serving time for felony theft. She's going to spend the next several months in a cell thinking about what she did. I hope she uses that time wisely. I hope she really does get help for whatever drove her to steal from her own daughter on her wedding day. But honestly, that's not my concern anymore. My concern is my husband, my baby, my father, my future. My mother made her choices. Now she has to live with them, just like I have to live with mine. The difference is, I can look at myself in the mirror. I can sleep at night. I can hold my head high knowing I did nothing wrong. Can she say the same? I doubt it. And that, more than any jail sentence, is the real punishment. Living with the knowledge of what you did. Knowing that your own daughter had to press charges against you because you stole from her and lied about it. That's something she'll carry forever. I used to dream about reconciliation. About my mother serving her time, getting out, getting help, and maybe one day we could have some kind of relationship again. I don't dream about that anymore. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. What she did wasn't just a crime. It was a betrayal of everything a mother should be. She was supposed to protect me, support me, celebrate my happiness on my wedding day. Instead, she used it as an opportunity to steal from me. That's not a mistake. That's not a momentary lapse in judgment. That's a fundamental failure of character. My child will never know her grandmother. That makes me sad sometimes, but it's the right decision. I will not expose my daughter to someone who steals from family and lies about it. I will not teach her that forgiveness means accepting abuse. I will teach her that she deserves to be treated with respect. That family is earned through love and trust, not just blood. That she should never let anyone make her feel guilty for protecting herself. Those are the lessons I've learned from this experience. They came at a high price, but they were worth it. I'm stronger now than I was before my wedding. I know myself better. I know what I'm willing to accept and what I'm not. I know that I can survive the worst kind of betrayal and come out the other side intact. My mother tried to steal more than my rings. She tried to steal my happiness, my trust, my peace of mind. She failed. I have all of those things and more. She's the one sitting in a cell. She's the one who lost her daughter, her brother, her freedom, her reputation. She's the one who has to live with the consequences of her choices. And me? I'm living my best life. Every single day. That's the real victory. Not the trial, not the conviction, not the sentence. The victory is that I didn't let what she did destroy me. I used it to make myself stronger. I built something beautiful out of the ashes of her betrayal. And I will keep building. Every day for the rest of my life. No matter what happens when she gets out. No matter what my mother's side of the family says or does. I will keep moving forward. Because that's what survivors do. We don't let the people who hurt us have power over our futures. We take that power back. We use it to create lives worth living. And that's exactly what I've done. My wedding rings still sparkle just as bright as they did the day my husband put them on my finger. They carry a few more memories now. Some painful, some triumphant. But mostly they remind me of one thing. That love is stronger than betrayal. That trust, once broken, doesn't have to stay broken forever. That I found someone who will never hurt me the way my mother did. That's what those rings mean to me now. Not just a promise between my husband and me, but a promise to myself. That I will never be a victim again. That I will protect myself and my family. That I will choose love over resentment, peace over revenge, future over past. My mother stole my rings, but I got them back. She tried to destroy my wedding day, but I got married anyway. She attempted to break my spirit, but I only grew stronger. Some people might call that karma. I just call it justice. The rings are on my finger where they belong. My husband is by my side where he belongs. My baby is growing inside me, safe and loved and wanted. And my mother? She's exactly where she belongs too. In a place where she can't hurt me anymore. That's not revenge. That's just reality. And reality, as it turns out, is pretty damn good. So to everyone who asked for an update, there it is. The full story. The trial. The sentencing, the aftermath. The family drama. The restraining orders. The healing. It's been a long road from that bathroom where I left my rings on the counter. But I've walked every step of it. And I'll keep walking. Forward. Always forward. Into a future that my mother can't touch. That's the best revenge of all. Living well. Being happy. Refusing to be defined by someone else's crimes. I hope my story helps someone else who's going through something similar. You don't have to protect people who hurt you just because they're family. You don't have to choose forgiveness over justice. You don't have to carry guilt for consequences that someone else earned through their own actions. Press charges. Protect yourself. Build a life that makes you happy. That's what I did. And I've never regretted it. Not for a single second. My mother made her choice when she took those rings. I made mine when I decided to hold her accountable. We both have to live with our choices now. The difference is I can live with mine just fine. I don't know if she can say the same. And honestly, I don't really care anymore. My focus is on the future. On my husband, my baby, my father, my friends. On the family I'm building, the life I'm creating, the person I'm becoming. That's all that matters now. Everything else, including my mother, is just part of the past. And the past, as they say, is a foreign country. I don't live there anymore. The letters started arriving 3 weeks after she got out the first time. I didn't recognize the handwriting at first because she had disguised it, but the postmark was from a town 20 minutes away where my aunt had moved after the lawsuit destroyed her financially. The first letter was almost sweet in a twisted way. It talked about how much she missed me, how she thought about me every day in jail, how she hoped we could rebuild our relationship someday. I showed it to my husband and he said we should document it but not respond. The no contact order was still in effect and technically she was already violating it by sending mail. The second letter came a week later and the tone had shifted. She said she knew I was pregnant because someone had told her. She said it wasn't fair that I was getting to be a mother when she had been such a good mother to me, and this was how I repaid her. She said the baby would grow up knowing that her own mother sent her grandmother to prison over a pair of rings. She said I would regret this when I was older and alone and realized that family was all that mattered. I called my lawyer after that one. He said we could report the violation, but it would be hard to prove she had sent them since they weren't signed and the handwriting was disguised. He suggested installing cameras and documenting everything. My husband went to the hardware store that same day. He bought cameras for every angle of our property. Front door, back door, mailbox, driveway, side yard. We could see everything now. The letters kept coming. Sometimes 2 in 1 week. The tone got darker each time. She started making references to things only she would know. My childhood nickname. The name of my first pet. The song she used to sing to me when I was scared of thunderstorms. It was like she was trying to prove she was still my mother, still had some claim on me, still mattered even though I had cut her out. Then the threats started. She never said anything directly actionable. She was too smart for that. But she would write things like accidents happen to people who forget where they came from. Or I hope nothing bad ever happens to that baby of yours. It would be such a shame. Or I know where you live now. Such a pretty house. Would be terrible if something happened to it. My hands would shake every time I opened the mailbox. My husband started checking it instead so I wouldn't have to see them first. We reported every single letter to the police, but they said there wasn't enough to arrest her. The threats were too vague. The letters weren't signed. We couldn't prove definitively that she had sent them, even though we both knew she had. The police suggested we get a P.O. box and stop receiving mail at home. We did that, but somehow she found out the P.O. box address too. The letters started arriving there instead. That's when I knew she was watching us somehow. Or someone was watching us for her. I started looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. I stopped going to my regular grocery store, my regular coffee shop, my regular everything. I varied my routes to and from work. I never went anywhere alone. The paranoia was exhausting, but it felt necessary. My father was furious when he found out about the letters. He wanted to go confront her directly, but I begged him not to. It would only make things worse and might give her ammunition to play the victim. She was good at that. She had played the victim through her entire trial, crying about how she was just a mother who made a mistake, who needed help, not punishment. The jury hadn't bought it, but plenty of people did. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years started reaching out to tell me I was being too harsh, that she had served her time and deserved a second chance. That holding grudges was unhealthy and I needed to forgive for my own sake. I blocked all of them. I didn't need people in my life who thought I should forgive someone who was actively threatening me and my unborn child. The breaking point came 6 months into my pregnancy. I was home alone because my husband had to work late. It was maybe 8 o'clock at night and I was in the living room watching TV when I heard something at the front door. Not a knock. More like scratching. Like someone was trying to get in. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the camera app. The front porch light had burned out a few days earlier, and we hadn't replaced it yet, so the image was dark. But I could see a figure standing at the door, hunched over, doing something to the lock. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I called 911 and whispered that someone was trying to break into my house. They said they were sending officers immediately. I stayed on the line, watching the camera, barely breathing. The figure straightened up and turned toward the camera. The motion sensor light on the neighbor's porch clicked on and illuminated her face. It was my mother. She looked directly into the camera like she knew exactly where it was. Then she smiled. Not a warm smile. A cold one. The kind of smile that says, "I see you and I'm not scared of you." She walked away calmly, not running, not hurrying like she had all the time in the world. The police arrived 8 minutes later. She was long gone by then. But I had the footage. Crystal clear video of my mother at my front door in the middle of the night, doing something to my lock. The police reviewed it and said it looked like she had been trying to pick the lock. They found scratch marks on the deadbolt consistent with amateur lock-picking tools. They also found something else on the porch that I hadn't noticed on the camera. A baby blanket. Pink with yellow ducks. The same pattern as the one she had given me when I was born. The one I had kept in a box in my closet for years until I finally threw it away after the trial. She had somehow gotten an identical one. Or she had always had another one. Either way, leaving it on my porch while trying to break into my house was the clearest threat she had made yet. They arrested her that night. Found her at my aunt's house 30 miles away. She claimed she had just wanted to talk to me, to see me, to give me a baby gift. She said she would never hurt me or my baby, that she loved us, that I was overreacting. Her lawyer tried the same tactics as before. Mental health issues. Desperation to reconnect with family. No actual harm done since she never got inside. The prosecutor wasn't having it. She pointed out the pattern of harassment. The letters. The vague threats. The violation of the no-contact order. The attempted break-in while I was home alone and pregnant. She argued that my mother posed a genuine threat to my safety and should be held without bail. The judge agreed. My mother stayed in jail awaiting trial. The trial itself was almost anticlimactic compared to everything else. The evidence was overwhelming. The camera footage. The letters. The baby blanket. The scratch marks on the lock. Testimony from the mailman who had noticed a woman matching my mother's description watching our house from a parked car multiple times over the previous months. Her own text messages to my aunt, recovered from her phone, talking about how she was going to get me back for ruining her life, how I thought I was so special but I would learn, how she would make sure my baby knew what kind of person I really was. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty on all counts. Stalking. Harassment. Attempted breaking and entering. Violation of a protective order. Criminal threatening. The sentencing hearing was different from the first one. This time nobody from my mother's side showed up except my aunt, who sat in the back looking exhausted and defeated. No one yelled at me. No one called me names. It was like they had finally accepted that defending her was a lost cause. The judge took his time with the sentence. He said he had reviewed her history.